Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about how to set up a Raspberry Pi with the intention to run Snipe-IT on Docker. Now, if you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi, it's a computer that will allow you to run an entire operating system on an SD card. And today I'm going to walk you through how to set up that Raspberry Pi in a way where foundationally it's running a core operating system that we can use to run Docker, and then to use that Docker instance to spin up and run Snipe-IT. Again, all on a Raspberry Pi, all running on a very tiny compact SD card. So let's get right into it. All right, so the first step that you need to do is you need to take this SD card that you have, you need to plug it into your computer. So I've got a Mac Studio and I've got an SD card reader that is built into the Mac Studio. If you don't have an SD card reader built into your computer, you can buy a wide range of SD card adapters out there in the marketplace. If you're on a Mac, if you're on a PC, then you can follow along with me. Raspberry Pi has come out with a piece of software called the Raspberry Pi Imager, and what this tool does is it gives you the ability to download any Raspberry Pi compatible operating system and install it onto your SD card. So the next step is to take this SD card and plug it into my computer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And once I have that installed or plugged into my computer, now my computer is reading that SD card, and I will see that here under storage. So I can click on storage and I can see here it is, volume system boot. It's a 32 gigabyte SD card. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. The Raspberry Pi device is also very important. So we need to select the device that we're going to be inserting this card into. So I have a Raspberry Pi 3. It's a several generations older device, but for this purpose and for this tutorial, this device will run just fine. But if you click on Raspberry Pi under the device, you can select all the different models that are available. So you can actually see that you can actually select the Raspberry Pi 1, the 0, the Raspberry Pi 4 or 5. We have the Raspberry Pi 3, and that's what we're going to be using for this tutorial series. The next step is to install an operating system. Now, when you press choose OS, you're going to get a lovely little menu that's going to give you options to automatically download and install an operating system. And it's going to give you options for pre-built packages. So if you wanted to run an emulation game system on your Raspberry Pi, you could select this option. If you wanted to run a media player or some other general purpose operating system, you can select these options. For the purpose of this tutorial, we wanted to select an operating system though that was small, lightweight, that would fit on a 32 gigabyte SD card, that would leave plenty of room for Snipe-IT, for Docker, and all the other utilities that we're going to be installing on top of it. So we wanted to pick an operating system that was relatively small already. So we researched and we went with an operating system called DietPi. If you're not familiar with DietPi, DietPi is a very minimalistic operating system. As it sounds, it runs this operating system with the bare minimum features. So it's not going to have a very bloated footprint. It's going to run with only the essential features that you need to run your little tiny home server, and it's going to run efficiently and in a minimalistic way. Now you can go to the DietPi website, and I'll have that link down below, and you can download the DietPi ISO file, the image file, by going to their website and going to the download section, and you'll actually see a selection where you can pick the Raspberry Pi that you have, and in this case, again, we have the Raspberry Pi 3, and then you can download that image. Now, I've already downloaded it, and in order to upload a custom image, you have to scroll down under Operating System, and you need to choose Use Custom. Now, when that happens, you'll see that I've already I've already downloaded the DietPi IMG file. I'm going to press open. And now that I've got all three of the elements selected, I'm going to go ahead and press next. It's telling me that there's already something on this SD card, and it's asking me if I want to apply the OS customization settings. I'm going to go ahead and just press edit settings, and you can actually see here that we have the ability to set a custom host name. We have the ability to set a custom username and password. We have the ability to set to join a custom SSID. We have the ability to enable SSH and other options. Now, DietPi already has enabling of SSH set up by default. So we don't need to enable SSH. It's already something that happens. And as far as I know, enabling any of these features may or may not work. Again, these are core features that are really meant for the Raspberry operating system, and your mileage may vary based on the image that you're uploading. So I'm not going to configure any of the options here. I'm simply going to press save, and then it's going to ask me if I want to apply any customization settings. I'm going to say no. Again, I press edit settings just to kind of show you that you can customize settings here, but again, I've had some problems setting settings here. We're going to show you how to connect to Wi-Fi and how to set network settings directly in DietPi natively. So we're going to skip over the edit settings section. I'm going to press no. And now it says all existing data will be erased, and I'm fine with that. I'm going to go ahead and press yes. Now it is asking me for my password, and it is erasing the disk, and it's installing DietPi. Now again, DietPi is very small, it's a very lightweight footprint, and therefore it's going to install very quickly on the SD card. Once it's installed on the SD card, we're going to take that SD card, we're going to eject it from the computer, and we're going to plug it into the Raspberry Pi. We're going to plug that Raspberry Pi, we're going to turn it on, we're going to connect it up to our monitor, and then we're going to boot up the Raspberry Pi, and then we're going to walk through what it looks like on first boot when DietPi runs for the first time. And I'm going to walk you through all the things that you need to do to get DietPi up and running so that you can get Docker installed. So this first tutorial is really going to be geared towards how to get this baseline configuration set up. All right, now this has been successful. I'm going to go ahead and press continue, and now I can go ahead and close the Raspberry Pi Imager app. All right, so now I'm going to eject the SD card, and I'm going to go ahead and insert it into my Raspberry Pi. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my external monitor, and I'm going to go ahead and start that up. And here we go. All right, so now the Raspberry Pi is booting up, as you can see, and we are running DietPi. It's doing a whole bunch of checks. Again, this is the first time that DietPi is running. It's checking to just validate and verify that everything is operating okay, and it's going to start asking me questions about how I want to customize and utilize DietPi. Now, when you first set up DietPi, when you first turn it on, it's going to check for updates. And again, we have just downloaded this image, so it should be pretty clean. It should be pretty up to date, but there will always be some updates that need to be run. Okay, so the very first thing, it's giving you the default username and password, again, to DietPi. It's displaying the username and password here on screen, and then you press enter to log in. So again, I'm just logging in with the information I see on screen. And I'm typing in the username and password as shown. I typed it in wrong. I'm gonna try it again. There we go. And now I'm logged in to the DietPi. Now that I'm logged in, you can see here it is checking for updates. And as I said before, we shouldn't have a lot of updates, but there may be a little bit, a few updates that need to be run. Now, the only when you run DietPi for the first time, if you're not connected to any network at all, then your DietPi environment will not successfully check for updates, obviously, because it will not have an internet connection. So in order to ensure that you're following along with me, the DietPi should be plugged into an Ethernet port at minimum so that it has a valid network connection. When you are running through the DietPi instance and the first run, it needs to be connected to the internet in order to pass all the checks. If you're not connected to the internet, it won't pass all the checks, and it will simply tell you, hey, we couldn't validate and verify that there were any updates, etc. It will spit you out to the configuration screen, and it will ask you to attempt to connect to the internet. All right, so now it's asking me to validate my PC keyboard type. It says here, please select the model keyboard of this machine. I'm going to press generic 105 key PC. That's totally fine. I'm not going to bother too much. I'm just going to accept that it's prompting me with English UK. Technically, it's English US, but I'm going to go ahead and just accept English UK for the sake of the tutorial. And I'm not going to alter the default keys of the keyboard. And there is no compose key. I'm going to press OK. And just kind of walking through these. Now, here it's asking if we want to change the global software password for DietPi, and we highly recommend doing this. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to record the process, and I'm not going to record the password that I'm selecting for this step. So I'm going to press cancel on the recording, but I'm going to go back and actually make this change. Highly recommend that you do this for security purposes. And of course, it's asking here, do you want to change the default login password for the root user and the default password? Again, highly recommend that you do this. Again, it will display the password. I'm not going to do that on the video. Please do this though on your environment. You definitely never ever want to configure anything with the default password ever. All right, so now that we've got that out of the way and we're kind of just zipping through the setup, we can see here that we are now at the section where it's telling us that we have some updates to run. Okay, so if we simply go to OK, we're going to get a notice saying, hey, there are some updates. So you need to actually go to the install option. You need to answer this question. DietPi was unable to detect any additional software selections for install. That's true. We haven't selected anything just yet. Do you wish to continue with DietPi as a pure minimal image? I will say yes. All right, so again, we're just setting up DietPi with the core base essentials. We're not installing anything at this point. We're just setting up DietPi, and we're making sure that it's got all the information in packages that it needs to run, just the DietPi itself. And again, it does have SSH enabled, as you saw at the beginning screen, the first screen prior to the screen. It uses an SSH server called Dropbear by default. You can install another SSH server if you like, but that is default. It's turned on by default. As long as you're connected to the internet, as long as the Raspberry Pi has a valid LAN IP address, you should be able to SSH into it on the same network. If you wanted to SSH into it from outside of the network, you would need to open up ports or put the Raspberry Pi behind a reverse proxy or do some other networking in order to access it remotely. Highly recommend against enabling SSH off network. If you need to SSH into it, maybe a VPN or some other secure mode of communication into the machine would always be a good idea. Again, proxies are your friend in this situation. Okay. Diapy would like to connect anonymous usage statistics. I am going to say opt out and purge uploaded data. I'm going to say yes, okay. I don't really want to participate in that. And boom, now we are at the point where we are at the command prompt. So again, at this point, we have simply gotten to the screen where we have finished setting up the Raspberry Pi, and now we need to ensure and validate that we can connect this Raspberry Pi to the network. Now, where I have this Raspberry Pi located physically, I need this Raspberry Pi to be connected to Wi-Fi. I don't have the ability to leave it connected to my home router. So I need to enable Wi-Fi, and I do have a USB Wi-Fi adapter in the inside of the Raspberry Pi. Now, wonderful feature of DietPi is that it automatically detects any hardware that is activated for Wi-Fi, and it gives you the ability to turn it on. Now, it's off by default, so to get to that, you simply type DietPi config. So we're going to go ahead and just type that in, DietPi config, and that's going to bring us to the configuration of DietPi. Now we're going to go down to network options and adapters, and we'll see that the Wi-Fi is set to off, disconnected. We're going to go ahead and turn it on, and it's warning us that when we turn it on, the network connections may drop, and that's okay. We're going to go ahead and press OK, and now it is enabling Wi-Fi, and as you can see, it's turning on the hardware adapter for the Wi-Fi, and it is rebooting and restarting the network service here on the Raspberry Pi. So we're just going to wait and let that run, and once it's done running, it's going to bring us right back to the configuration screen where we're going to be given the ability to connect to Wi-Fi. So let's wait for that to happen, and I'll walk you through the process of connecting to Wi-Fi. And then, of course, once we connect to Wi-Fi, we really need to make sure that we have a static IP address, so that once we are set up with the server, we are using an IP address that doesn't change, right? Because once we're connected to Wi-Fi, we want to always have the same IP address. All right, so now that we've enabled Wi-Fi, we need to reboot the Raspberry Pi. We can do that by pressing or by typing reboot. And then once we restart the system, it should enable the hardware and allow us to scan for the wireless connection and allow us to connect to Wi-Fi. So let's go ahead and just restart the Raspberry Pi here, and then we'll rerun the DietPi config, and then we'll connect to Wi-Fi. All right, DietPi config, and what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be changing the Wi-Fi SSID. So again, we're going to be going into Wi-Fi, and then here you can see here that I have already scanned for a SSID. I'm going to go ahead and redo that so that you can kind of see the process that I went through again. So it says scan and configure SSID. I have multiple unused slots. I already have a slot configured. I'm going to go ahead and just configure slot number 1 so you can see what I did. And when you select slot number 1, we can see scan and configure an SSID, or you can manually enter in all the Wi-Fi credentials. Now, I really like the scan feature because it automatically shows you all the Wi-Fi connections that are available, and you can see here that these are my Wi-Fi connections that are available at my location. I'm going to go ahead and press my Wi-Fi. You can see here that it offers 3 different types of security: WPA, WEP, and none. Most of your Wi-Fi on the market today is going to be WPA PSK, so go ahead, likely press that and press OK, and then it's going to ask you to type in your password. Now, as you're typing in your password, you're noticing that it's typing in the password in clear text, which is super not great. So I'm going to type in the password, and I am going to edit this part of the video out. And all right, so I've added the SSID and I've typed in the password, and I've edited that part out where you can actually see the password. So if you're following along and you've scanned and you've added that, you've actually seen that DietPi shows the password just to validate that you put it in correctly. I'm just going to press cancel at this point. It says please select an option for slot 2. I've already now if we go, we can see here that I've got 2 SSIDs for slot. We've got a pre-configured wireless connection for slot 1, and we have a pre-configured wireless for slot 2. Okay. So if I ever wanted to edit this, I can always click on it, and then if I wanted to delete this from the database, I can just go forward with that and press OK. And now I'm back to the original 1 slot pre-configured connection. I don't want to delete this though, so I'm going to go ahead and just press done, and now I'm back here. Now you can see here that I am already connected to the wireless. I have an IP address of 192.168.0.124, and it says that it's currently set to static. So let me show you how I got this to a static state. So again, as you can see here, Ethernet is disconnected, Wi-Fi is connected, and I have a static IP address. So how did I get this to be static? Well, first step was to get to a normal command prompt. Once I got to a normal command prompt, in order to get to a static IP address, I simply typed in sudo no etc network interfaces. We're editing the network interfaces file, and when you do that, you're going to see under Wi-Fi, the second line under Wi-Fi is going to read iFace, which stands for interface, WLAN 0, which is the first interface, innet network, and it's going to say DHCP. You're going to remove the DHCP, and we're going to replace that with the word static. And then you're going to take the address and you're going to delete the last 3, and you're going to type in whatever IP address you want that Raspberry Pi to have as the static IP address for this device. And once you've done those 2 things, you're going to go ahead and press save. So that's Control X, and then you're going to press Y to save, and then enter. Okay, so now that that has been completed, you need to restart the network. Now you don't need to restart the whole Raspberry Pi. You could, but sudo service networking restart will just restart the network portion of the Raspberry Pi itself. And that will be all you need to do in order to validate the change that you just made. Now again, while this is restarting, let's rerun through all the things that we've done so far. We took our SD card, we entered it into the Mac Mini or the computer that you had. We flashed it with the Raspberry Pi imager. We took that, we put it inside of a Raspberry Pi, and we went through the first boot sequence, and we enabled Wi-Fi on the device. Now again, SSH is already enabled, so you can SSH if you have an Ethernet connection, which is how we got into the device the first time. Then after we got into the device, we SSH'd and enabled Wi-Fi. After Wi-Fi was enabled, we were able to capture an IP address, and then we were able to set that IP address to a static value by editing the etc network interfaces file. So as you can see, I'm back into my device and I have a static IP address set. So if I go back to DietPi config and I go back to network adapters, we can see that Wi-Fi is connected, and you can see here that I have a static IP address, and my static IP address is currently set to the IP address that I have set in the network interfaces file. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and go back and back again. All right, exit. All right, so now let's talk about updating and keeping the Raspberry Pi with DietPi updated. This is going to be something you're going to want to do on a regular basis, okay? So there are multiple different ways that you can keep the Raspberry Pi up to date, and one strategy for keeping the Raspberry Pi up to date is to tackle certain updates on a monthly cadence and then tackle other updates on a quarterly cadence. That's kind of the way that I like to think about it. On a monthly cadence, you're going to want to log in at least once a month, and you're going to want to run apt get or apt update and apt upgrade -y. And what that -y is going to do is it's going to answer yes to any command prompt automatically for you. Now, this is going to automatically update and upgrade the items on your Raspberry Pi. And this is really important because as security updates come out, you're gonna want to patch those on a regular cadence. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that on my Raspberry Pi now. And as you can see, it is running. On a quarterly basis, you're gonna wanna run DietPi -update. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna run the DietPi update system, and it's going to run through the built-in DietPi checker. So again, this is the apt-get. So this is like the software updates for the packages that we've installed. And then the DietPi update is going to be core updates from DietPi itself. So again, always read the release notes for the things that you're updating before you run the updates. Always test and back up before you run the updates. DietPi has a great backup tool. Highly recommend looking into that. But now we have a great foundation for installing Docker. And once we install Docker, we're going to install a tool called Portainer. And then once we have Portainer running, we're going to use that to install Snipe-IT. And again, the goal of this tutorial is to show you how easy it is to use Docker, how to install common applications, and since we're in the IT sphere, an application that a lot of IT folks need in their tool chest, war chest, is a great inventory system. And a great inventory system that I use often that's open source and free, so long as you can run it on your own and secure it on your own, is Snipe-IT. And I wanted to just create a tutorial that shows how easy it is to do that. We're going to get into networking concepts, how to secure your Raspberry Pi. We're going to talk about how to encrypt traffic using HTTPS, and we're going to set up Let's Encrypt certificates. We're going to talk about best ways to secure and harden your Raspberry Pi and putting it behind a proxy or opening up ports and other sort of like security methodologies like DDNS. So join me in the next video where we dig into some of those other topics. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give me a like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments below.